Okay, welcome everybody to this evening's AUS Securities webinar, Forex Trading Live Market Analysis. Let's get into the disclaimer. Please read through the disclaimer if you would. If you're on our YouTube live stream, I cannot see the chat, but you're more than welcome to watch or just use the link I've given and you can come and join us so you can talk to me, but I can't see your chat. All right, so everybody, please read through this disclaimer before we move along. Any questions, you can just put them into the question box or the chat box as we're moving along. Hopefully there's not too much background noise. I've got the fan on because it's red hot here in Queensland at the moment. So hopefully I'm coming through clear enough. All right, let's move along. If you don't know me, my name's Duncan Cooper. I'm the Senior Market Strategist and Trading Mentor at AUS Securities, and I'm a full-time trader. I've been trading now more than 15 years in the Forex market and mentoring more than 10. Want to contact me, my email is on screen there, duncan.cooper@acy.com. And if you want to connect with me in the week, just go to our website, acy.com, go to the market news tab, you'll find my analysis there, or our YouTube channel, AUS Securities Australia. And I post most of it through my own personal accounts as well. So on Twitter and LinkedIn there, you can connect with me if you wish. And our Telegram channel, that's where you get up-to-date analysis that's coming out from us. If you want to get access to that, just contact Nathan Bray. His email's on the screen. I'll put his details in the chat momentarily. So if you want to get access to my chart layouts and templates as well that I'm using in the webinars, then contact Nathan. He will help you set up. That's for MT4. And any questions about opening accounts, it's not a sales pitch from me, but if you've got questions, he can more than help you with any questions that you might have. So these details in the chat, phone number, email there. Any questions, just give him a call. All right, so let's get into what's happening. Let's go to the news first of all. All right, let's get this refreshed. Okay, so not too much news this week. Midnight, moving into Wednesday. These are Queensland time. We've got the AUS CPI Consumer Conference coming out. Tomorrow we got in the morning for the Aussie, the CPI data. So those are the two things to watch over the next 12 to 18 hours or so. All right, so the market for the Aussie crosses, we'll be looking at the CPI data. Is it going to tick down? Is it going to tick up? What's going to happen next week with the interest rate decision? So on and so forth, right? So a bit risky just getting into a trade on the Aussie if you haven't got the thing in profit and risk-free. But 10:30 a.m. in the morning, we have the Aussie CPI data coming out, okay? So you can go to Forex Factory and just review the items that are coming out. If you're on our Telegram, I've already done a video of the ones to watch for, but that being said, over the next 24 hours, those are the two ones coming up. So let's get into the charts. And we'll just have a quick look at, first of all, the dollar index to the weekly. And I've been discussing that top. Is that a higher top? Are we coming down now to put in a higher bottom? Did have quite a rejection down at the 79% retracement of that weekly range last week. Thursday, Friday, after the FOMC statement, we definitely reversed, but we've been reversing back the other way in yesterday's trading and early trading today. So, going to be interesting. Are we going to put in a higher bottom or is this continuing down? It's worth monitoring closely. This is the move up of last week, or this is the rejection of last week. Last week's whole move was here. All right. This is Thursday, Friday, rally back up. Of course, we're pulling back, and I'm just watching that pullback. So almost pulled back 62%. Is it going to get support at 62% here to then further move up this week? like so. So you can watch that, see, but monitor its position through the week and within that rejection of Thursday, Friday. S&P 500, this is how I had it mapped out from last week. Now on the 4-hour chart, we've actually rallied back. Well, on the day chart, we've rallied back up, but it's more of a 4-hour swing. So I'm looking at that as the movement in general terms down. On the 4-hour, I get rid of that one. We've had this kind of move here. Down, draw your fib across that range. I'll get rid of that other fib at the moment so we can see what we're doing. We're certainly holding at there's a 62% level from a larger, this larger range over here, that 62 level. But we're in between the 62 and 79 as a stopping point of this range. So there's the 79. Let me just highlight that whole area. Just there. All right, so to me, it looks like we've had a bit of a pop-up, dropped, popping back up. You see it, you can see the 4-hour resistance here and the 4-hour resistance here, 4-hour resistance over there. We're just trading below 4,000. So anything above 4,000 at the moment is a little bit sticky for the S&P 500. So I guess the market's still working out what's happening with the whole issue with the banks. Are we going to get any more? Is it now the Deutsche Bank maybe struggling? So overall, this looks a little bit negative. It doesn't want to get above, 4,000. We really need to get above 4,000 if we're going to see any upward pressure, I think, on the S&P 500. So back to the daily. I think we're overall within that range from high to low, and we've topped out. And we're going to be moving like so. All right, that's how I'm viewing things at the moment. Unless the US dollar continues to sell off, it's going to change my picture of this. But I'm thinking that maybe we did bottom on the US dollar last week. All right, with those two pictures in mind, let's get to the charts. Let's have a first look at the close look at the pairs that I put out today on Telegram. So earlier in the day, I didn't know this was going to happen, but when you watch the market for years, then you get a good sense of how the market ebbs and flows. So this daily chart area of resistance here, we came back up to it yesterday, held, sold off on the 4-hour chart. Well, we held there and then we sold off through Asia. And I said, can we retest 142.14? Went up to 142.14. There we go. And also I was looking at can it retest 142.14 plus the figure? So clearly it's done that. So breaking it down, the area that I put out when price was moving down here, I said, can it come back up to this area? Which is done. So there was a retest. If you traded on the retest there, you could have already, if you traded right at the test of 142.14, you could be risk-free now. Now, price may well move through here. Price is always right. Sometimes we're right as traders, so you have to manage the risk. Now, haven't really, well, if you're waiting for a trend line break, we probably have had a trend line break. There it is. All right, it's quite aggressive, but we had a trend line break. We may well come back up for another little sniff of that area. So what I would be doing, if you want to trade in this area, you could trade up here. If it comes back up here, you could trade with 100 bit stop above, or trade with whatever amount of pips above this area you want to go, or you could look at a much smaller range. Let's say that's the bottom of the initial first sell-off, you could be looking for a very tight entry at the 79% level up there, 142.04, stop just above the high. However you want to play it. So do you want a tight stop? Do you want a larger stop? But at the moment, clearly that daily resistance level is holding it as resistance with it 2 tests, once today, once yesterday. So clearly the market's watching up there. So you have to decide, do you want to trade? Okay. And if we're failing up there, we could well tidy things off so we can see what I'm doing on the higher time frame. You know, we could well, this failure here, simply move back down to weekly support. Now, the strong support down there, weekly support, and at the speed this pair keeps moving, it's worth, you know, watching down at 139.54 this week or down to 138.82 for a trade back up the opposite way. It's rather range bound. All right, but at the moment, are we failing for a move down from 142.14? All right, so make your mind up how you want to trade it, or if you want to trade it, and then, you know, may offer a very nice trade down to the bottom where weekly support is. All right, I want to go hop over to the pound dollar, put this out as well at the same time this morning. Now, we've retraced. This is a retracement against a weekly downtrend. This is a downtrend from a lower bottom coming up, retracing from the double top. We retested the 79% level earlier in the day. And yesterday trend is up, and we could still continue up and move above, but the weekly trend is down. So until we take out this double top area here, the weekly trend remains down, and I'm looking for this area to possibly form the lower top on the weekly chart. Now, there are actually two 79% levels. There's the weekly one and there's a 4-hour one here. We've moved down to a lower bottom. So this is a corrective rally on the 4-hour chart back to fractionally above the 79. But you could trade at the 79 stop above the high, and that would be working for you at the moment. All right, we've had a 4-hour entry here when that aggressive outside candle broke the low of the blue candle. That was an entry in the 4-hour perspective. And we're starting to trade down now back below 122.93 weekly resistance. So I'm anticipating that we are maybe failing up here to move back down the range. Ultimately, moving down to where we've come from, where we bottomed on the weekly chart over the last 2 or 3 weeks. All right. Now, what we may find over the next 24 hours, it's unlikely this is going to drop like a rock. I mean, it can, but unlikely, but it is selling off rather aggressively at the moment, is allow the market to come down. And ideally, at some point, does 123 become resistance? Do you see a failure on a rally back to 123? All right, that would be a very obvious trade to look for. Or you simply drag the fib down from the high, keep dragging it down as price moves down, and then look to sell like at 79% retracement on that range. All right, if that presents. All right. Now you may already have your own entry style, so you can use whatever style you want to get in. But I think at the moment, moving it back to the 4-hour chart there, we may well have failed up there, that 79% level, for a move down. So what I'm going to do is we can review this later in the week. All right, I'm going to head over to the Eurodollar now. All right, so this is my daily chart. There's lots of lines on here, which we probably don't need them all in. So I'm going to take a few out for the moment. All right. We came up to this area last week, And it's a 79% retracement of February's decline into just a new month's low in March. And we retraced all the way back up to 79% level into hitting that level on Thursday, early Thursday after FOMC, after Wednesday's trading, and had a nice sell-off Thursday, Friday. Been moving back up. I mean, the day trend here is up. So there is the potential for it to continue up, but that was a very hefty rejection there at 79% level. And this is the inverse look of what I was discussing before on the dollar index, where we may have found support on that weekly range at the 79% level. All right, so if that dollar index has found support at 79%, this is failed at 79%. Now, at the moment, we're trading above 108, just. So this declined, Thursday's Friday decline here. That 62 level is of the bigger range, but that could be where we hold. There's two 62 levels there, one of the bigger range, one of the smaller range. So that area could definitely hold that corrective move back up at the moment from Thursday's Friday's drop. So I'm just watching. We're back above 108 at the moment. So if I was to trade, if I was anticipating that we failed at the 79% level of the bigger range and that's moved down, and then is this corrective? What I'd like to see at the moment is we've got daily resistance from over here that we've just moved above. I'd like to be back below 108.02, so back below the figure. We have just put in a very nice rejection on the 4-hour candle, so just a break of the 4-hour candle would be maybe a good entry to trade down as a 4-hour entry. But it'd be nice to take in your entry below that 108.02 level. All right, let me just get rid of those lines. So on the 15-minute chart, still in an uptrend on the 15-minute chart at the moment, and it's still above 108.02. So I'm just monitoring. What I'd like to see is a bit of a breakdown below 108.02 at the moment before looking to engage. So what I'd like to see over the next 24 hours is a breakdown. And can that breakdown occur so that we do move back below 108.02 in the figure there, and that area becomes resistance? Because whilst we're above that level, that area that I'm saying I'd like to be resistance could be support. All right, so I'm favoring to the downside in respect of where we failed on Thursday at the 79% level, but I'm not seeing a setup yet to trade to the downside. So just going back to the 4-hour chart, whilst I'm obviously discussing can we fail and move back below 108, this could move a lot higher through the week, could go all the way up to the 79% level, like the pound's been doing this week, like the pound's been doing today. So it has put in a nice little inverted hammer there. So maybe a break of that candlestick low is all the market needs to confirm a move down. All right. All right, let's head over to the Aussie pairs. So the big question on the Aussie yen is, to the day chart, back to the monthly chart, we're trading into monthly support here, but the monthly trend is down. So we're having some form of bounce on support, but can we continue down? We have a top to a lower bottom. There's a lower top here. So this is all downtrend. It's just bouncing into support. I'm not anticipating at the moment that we've got a change in trend here on the monthly chart, that we're just bouncing at support. Can we move down through this area? So that low, 87.01, that high, 86.24. Those are two levels that we really need to start to break below if we're going to continue to the downside long term. This whole weekly trend here is down. All right, now at the moment, I'll be monitoring the range of last week. We've obviously got the CPI data coming out tomorrow, so there's a bit of profit taking, covering of the short positions, waiting to see what that data brings. That data may quite obviously move price down and through support levels. So to the 4-hour chart, just want to monitor the range of last week at the moment. There's the high of last week to the low last week. We're halfway back up. So I'm going to be monitoring over the next 24 hours the 62 level or the 79 level. At the moment, we may be failing. You know, there is actually a smaller range that you could be monitoring, which is there. And we've been into the 62.79 zone, and there's 4-hour resistance here. So we may be failing there, but I'm more inclined to just monitor that bigger range. I wouldn't be opening a new position right now ahead of CPI data. But, you know, depending on what the data does, we could see a spike up tomorrow. So it's worth having your charts up to date. 88.01, so pretty much the figure there. Or can we get up to 79% level at 88.55? So just the levels I'm going to be monitoring tomorrow as the data gets released. Do we spike up? Do we start to hold and deal and want to reverse at those levels? All right. Now, come tomorrow, we may be already down the chart. Who knows? But I wouldn't take a new position personally myself ahead of that data. Aussie dollar. Now, I'm doing the same thing. That's the range of last week. This has been trading in very small ranges over the last few weeks. On the weekly chart here, we are in a downtrend. We're moving up from a lower bottom. We've had a 2-week corrective rally, very negative reversal last week. Down from 71.16 resistance. So we couldn't really entertain too much above 67. So it'd be well worth watching. Tomorrow, that same level that we failed at, if the data spikes it up. If it spikes it down, we won't be able to get in, but overall trend on the weekly chart is down. Monitoring the range of last week. At the moment, 62 levels at 67.07. That resistance level that we've been holding at 67.16. Just want to may review that. That's fine. I'm going to keep that at the same level. So just watching to see if we can get a spike up to that resistance level, the 62 level there. Okay. At the moment, it's worth noting that any move up today is holding at 4-hour top there, and we may only move back up to last month's low at 66.97. So we're below last month's low. I'm just pausing because I've got a question coming in. I'll have a look at the Nasdaq 100 for you a little bit later. All right, so the Aussie, waiting to see if we can just maybe move a little bit higher up the range of last week. There's the potential here for that to be ahead. Kind of a left shoulder area here. And if we got up to 79% level there, you know, a little right shoulder could form. All right, so that's why I'm just looking for that rally area up there if it can present. All right, euro pound. Won't spend much on this pair other than it's rather range bound. The great level to watch will be down here at 87.54 if we could pull back to that level. Let's move it to the 4-hour chart. And that's last week's low to high. 79% level of last week's range lines up with that daily support level. So this would be a great area to watch for support if we got down there. At the moment, though, we are getting a lot of good support across here, as you can see on the 4-hour chart. So maybe we can't get down there. But if I was looking to trade that, that would be my optimal level of support to look for price to move down to and then move back up. So can we move down to then move up to last week's high, and could you move through there? That's what I'll be looking for. All right. Cover the euro yen, the euro dollar already. We'll just have a quick look at what's going on. All right, so we may still get another test up there. And it may move through. I'm not always right. All right, the euro dollar still got a little bit of a bid to it. All right, cover the pound dollar, which is, just want to see what it's been doing since I've been talking. All right, pound yen. 161.80, weekly high to the left here. Price has been moving above it, moving below it at the moment. We're right. Well, today we've been testing it. Okay. So is it holding there to move down? Long term, I'm looking at that as a downtrend. And that is corrective. That rallied up to about a 79% level. So I'm looking for this to move down. All right, got another question coming in. So asking me about the 100 pip entry. I'm going to go through that tomorrow. I've already been through the 50-minute entry this month, so I've already been through that, but going through the 100 pip entry tomorrow. So you'll get the full approach of that tomorrow, which is relatively a simple approach. All right, so to the pound yen, back to it. That's that corrective range, movement down. We've moved up to 79 here, and it's rather choppy in here. All right. But smaller range here. I'll drop it to the 4-hour chart. That weekly resistance level, we're colored in blue, 161.80. We hit that yesterday. We came up for a further retest today. So anywhere near 61.80 at the moment is very good resistance for this pair. It might not get back up there. It might give you another opportunity. Let's just drop it down to 15-minute. You know, you can do the 15-minute entry is drawing a fib across that range. We've moved down. So I would, you know, if you want to use a 50-minute entry in this area, you look for the 79% retracement, stop above the high, and there's your entry there. If you want to use the 15-minute entry style. All right. Now, if you were bullish, I'm bearish because of where we're failing up there, but if you're bullish, I can see the potential of a 50-minute entry the opposite way is we've moved up this way today, up to that resistance level that I'm looking at failing at, but we've traded up that way. And we've just pulled back to the central pivot point in the figure and almost a 79. So in there was the potential for a buy maybe to come up for a retest, depending on which way you want to trade the pair. I prefer to look for the failure from the stronger level of resistance. So I would be monitoring that way at the moment. But either one could be correct intraday there. So, all right, you can monitor that. Cover the pound dollar. Drop it down to the 15-minute chart so we can see what price is doing. So what I do is come up and tested 123. See how the last two candles, last one closed below 123.93 and the figure. And then the last candles just try to get back up to the figure and couldn't, and it's back below 129.93, sorry, 122.93. So we may well, that may be the retest of that area now to move down. All right, New Zealand yen. All right, here's the weekly chart. It's very consolidatory, but longer term, I'm looking at that as a move down. Then it's gone all consolidatory through here. And I'm looking for the potential for this to break down like I was discussing on the Aussie yen. Okay, now support may hold here, it may not break down, but that's what I'm looking at. That's how I'm looking at it. Now, at the moment, we've got weekly, this is a weekly high here that we're holding at. We are quite range bound. And we've got weekly support here. And this is monthly support here. So we've actually traded below weekly support, monthly support, and obviously bounced up. Now, the market could do a number of things at the moment, depending on risk on and risk off. If we keep getting risk off because of the banks, then this may well trade down through these levels of support. If things get tidied up and it becomes a less risk environment, this may come down for a retest here to trade back up. Or, if it becomes risk off, we could simply be breaking down through these levels. All right, now, trading to the downside, I don't want to be selling, if I think it's going to move to the downside, or let's say that was the bias that you took, because this day chart is starting to break down. It is a lower bottom, lower top to a further lower bottom. If you go to the 4-hour chart and draw in last week's range, which is there, the 62 level, we trade back up inside last week's range, is just underneath that weekly resistance level at 62.31. So 82.17 to 82.31. If you're looking for a short, that would be the area to watch this week. All right. Of course, if you're looking for a long, you want to see price maybe retest 81.03 and hold to buy to trade up. All right. There's two sides of the market here. That nobody knows which side of the market is going to win. Clearly, support is still holding down there, but is it going to break? Now, you may be more on the side of this is just going to stay in a very large weekly range at the moment, and you want to trade up from support. Can it retest and hold to trade up? So there's actually, if we go back to the day chart, this is a weekly resistance level here. So we can actually start to be contained within a much narrower weekly resistance area here. We could hold at weekly support here and hold at weekly resistance up there. All right, so just got to understand what the environment is. It's very range bound. Key levels to watch are the weekly levels there at the moment on the New Zealand yen. All right, so the Aussie dollar. Now, it doesn't want to move below the overall trend. If you go to the weekly chart, it's down. That's the lower bottom. Like the Aussie, it's had a couple of corrective weeks up. Did form a bit of a double top on the day chart last week. So the trend is down on the higher time frames. Monthly trend is down. If you want to go and have a look at it, you can check it out. That's definitely down. Weekly's down. So this has just been corrective. So you couldn't 62.75. It's been a well-worn area of resistance holding for the last probably about a month now. Since that top formed in, well, it's the 1st of March. All right. So for the whole of March, pretty much been holding. Now, the trend actually on the day chart, in true terms of high tops and bottoms, is still in an uptrend, but clearly faltering at resistance, and the weekly trend is down. So, last week's candle, dark cloud cover, negative. We break the lower last week, we're probably heading down. At the moment, as we can clearly see, to the day chart, this weekly low here, we're still holding on it. We can't significantly move below it. So in the short term, I'm just monitoring last week's range. All right. Now we could most definitely revisit up here. 62.75, resistance, 79% fib, 62.69. We could easily get there. That's only like 50, what's that? It's 55 pips. You could easily get there this week. All right. So it is a bit range bound at the moment. I'm sure there's something better to trade at the moment than the New Zealand dollar if you're not already short. And you're trying to get a position. If you're trying to get a position for the long-term decline, you want to look for maybe a retest of these highs up here. All right. All right, that's the dollar. That's a New Zealand dollar. Now, before I go, it could, before I move to another pair, this could just come back down to here, 61.91, and still hold for the week and move back up. So if you're trading both sides of the market, there's a potential for that to come back down to support, move back up to resistance. There's two levels that are clear. The market's respecting both of them at the moment, but the weekly trend is down. Okay, so I would be favoring trying to sell a rally if that can come up to this area. All right, dollar Canadian. Now, I did my video this morning and discussed the dollar Canadian. I said, did actually get down to test last week's low. I didn't discuss last week's low. I was looking at the daily chart level that's been holding. Folks broke 136.51 last week, and we could well have folks broke it again this week. So I said, watch 136.51 to be support. So, and then we've got monthly resistance or support here on 136.64. So down here is clear support. And there was a 4-hour entry there, breaking above that red candle high. That was a 4-hour entry. It's already in profit. Don't know whether anybody took it, but earlier in the day, I said watch 136.54 to be support. And really, ultimately now the range, because we got down to last week's low, 136. Yeah, that's really the bottom of the range. And get the right number, 136.30. I'm going to use that now as support, get rid of that other line. So the range that we're in, daily resistance, daily support. Now I've taught you the range trade. We're not obviously right at the bottom of the range, so that trade can't be taken because it's trading exactly at the bottom of the range. But the range trade would be, or would have been, simply buying at the base of the range. Stop goes at the 127R. Now, if you missed that and you wanted to wait to see if it does hold, what you could look for now is, does price come back to the 79% level? Buy there, stop below the low, targeting the top of the range. Now, it might not offer you that. As I'm talking, it's moving up quite strongly, so you may have already missed your opportunity there to get in. All right, but over the next 24 hours, price may come back to 136.64. It may come back to, I'm going to put that line level back in. It may come back to 136.51. All right, there's a whole support area there. All right. Okay, you can monitor to see whether you can see a setup on a pullback back to support if it offers. Dollar franc. I discussed this level this morning in my video, and that level is this daily low here. I've been discussing the overall perspective of, is this a double bottom for a long-term double bottom pattern to move up? Too early in the day to tell whether that's going to come to fruition at the moment. Clear support's holding. Now we have the potential here of a left shoulder, inverted head, right shoulder here. Okay. Anybody spot that? Slav, are you on tonight? Or he's on a boat this week because he was trading dollar franc. All right, so this is, I had a fib drawn across there in the 4-hour range. So that we had a bounce from support, drew a fib from the low up to the most immediate high, 7% retracement there at support, and we're moving up. So you really needed to look for an entry down here. There's a 4-hour entry there, breaking above the red candle high there. And we're also at the 7% level of that range. Or a fraction short. We got down to the 7% of that range last week. And now it's created a smaller range, 7% pullback there. So we're definitely seeing, as we're in the London session, a bit of a US dollar revival from it selling off yesterday. All right, now you can still watch 91.37 through the week. You may well revisit, but you may have missed the best entry there already for the week on dollar franc. All right, dollar yen. To the daily chart, I had this area colored in. Weekly support down there. Let's just go to the weekly chart. There it is. There's a possibility, it's not a perfect technical head and shoulder pattern inverse, but that could be a left shoulder, that could be a head. We could be forming some form of right shoulder here. All right. We haven't, this high here hasn't technically broken above a significant top, but I don't really care about that. But the true, what's the word I'm looking for? Some people have to have things perfect, don't they? If it's not a perfect textbook head and shoulder pattern, I can't trade it. But, I'm flexible. That's possible support. That's a possible head and possible support once more there. All right. So I did say this morning, watch in between 131.11 and down to 130.40 for support. Now the day trend is still down here, so we could still continue down. It's still lower tops and bottoms, but this is a clear zone of support that the market is giving some form of respect to. All right, and there could be some form of inverse head and shoulder pattern forming here. Now it hasn't got down to the perfect left shoulder area for the right shoulder, but got a bit short. Got a bit short of the 62 level and the support level, but it could still come down, into this area this week and hold. Weekly levels at 130.40. That would be, for me, the stronger level to watch. 130.40. Can we get another move down and hold there to trade up? If we do get a risk-off environment from the banks this week, we'll probably move through there. But at the moment, 130.40, unless some extreme risk environment coming in, is seemingly holding there at the moment. And yes, somebody's saying to me, yeah, if the DXY goes up, dollar yen should go up. So yes, so that is the clear area of support where the market should. But the dollar index can go up and the dollar yen can go down in a risk environment. So it can still break below there if we, if let's say the German or the Eurozone has to bail out the Deutsche Bank, the German bank, whatever it's called. Not sure I've got the name right, but pretty sure it's the Deutsche Bank or the Deutsche Bank. If that has to have a bailout of some form, that's going to create a risk-off environment and the yen pairs will move down. All right, let's move along to gold. Now, monthly trend on gold is actually down. Everybody's going and saying this is going to 4,000. Well, not everybody, because I'm not, but I don't know where it's going long term. All I know in the most immediate term is that from the monthly perspective, we're moving up from a lower bottom. And if we can't take out that top, at some point, we're going to put in a lower top. All right. Now, at the moment on the weekly chart, we are faltering at weekly resistance, moving back below this level of weekly resistance at at 1959. Now the weekly trend is still up, higher top, higher bottom. So this could just pull back at 1 or 2 weeks, get support. 1920 is a long-term major top from over here. That could definitely be critical support on a pullback. So if you like trading gold, at the moment on the day chart, we're forming a lower top and we could be pulling back. If we can hold at 1920 and start to turn around, say on the 4-hour chart, then that could well be the buying area to move back up. If we trade and hold back below 1920 this week, we could be putting in a long-term monthly top up here. All right, so at the moment, the weekly is up, the daily is getting a bit mixed. Higher bottom, lower top, and we are we clearly up there at 1998. It's heavy going. So the levels to watch, if price could get back up, opportunity to sell on a further failure at 1998, if that presents, or if we move down, the buyers to be in control long term shouldn't really move below 1920. That's that monthly top. All right, if we clearly move below 1920, then the sellers are clearly back in control long term on that, on gold there. All right, so it's not in the best area at the moment. You know, higher bottom, lower top, it's a little bit mixed. So it's always nice to have a clear idea of the most immediate trend. Now on the 4-hour charts, well, if you trade above that 4-hour top, it's probably going to come back up to retest 1998. You have to wait and see. We are definitely getting a little bit of support from that 4-hour top because that's where we held there. So for the sellers, that area would need to break. For the buyers, that high needs to break. All right. Or I'll just leave that like that. We can review that later in the week. Now, I had a question about the Nasdaq. So whenever I reviewed it last, that's what I was drawing in. Potential double top there on the day chart. And Azu, yeah, I'm just going to call you Azu because I don't know how to pronounce your long name. So hopefully that doesn't offend you. For our charts, I don't know where your 4-hour entry was, but it's clearly failing up here. Starting to move, but it's starting to want to trade maybe below this 4-hour bottom. So that's going to put the 4-hour trend down. So to me, it looks like, if I move back to day chart, it looks like we're failing up here. And the 4-hour trend is just starting maybe to want to break down. It is rather consolidatory, so it could definitely come back up for another test of that level. You know, from a trading perspective, it would be nice to see a nice impulsive. So there was, let me just show you. So what I'd like to see is what I saw here, where we had a very impulsive move down. And then a retracement back up to the 79 level and it hits resistance and then it starts to sell off. So what I'd like to see now is some form of impulsive move again down. So we're still trading within this range here at the moment. All right, so if we could trade down to the 127 extension and then, you know, have a corrective move back up. So can it trade down? Have an impulsive move down. So we know that the 4-hour trend is breaking down to the downside. Can we get a 62.79% retracement after that for then another leg down? All right, that's how I would try to map things out in my mind. Now, whether or not price is going to deliver that kind of structure to trade, it's hard to tell. You know, one of your comments was about 4-hour entry. price could just simply come back up to that resistance level up here. So price could come up, there was a 4-hour entry just there. All right. And that was more than valid entry, putting your stop above the high there. Now price may well come back up to retest this area here. So, we could get a candle finishing like so at the top there. And then you might see another 4-hour entry trade down. You see a reversal. So there was a 4-hour entry just there. Okay. So my thoughts are maybe we are double topping on the day chart. The 4-hour trend at the moment is rather messy, but go back to the day chart. Day chart, if you want a much more of a position trade and a larger stop, trading the break of yesterday's very negative candle, putting your stop just above yesterday's high. It's like the 4-hour trade entry, what you're doing on the day chart. So your entry would be the break of yesterday's low, whatever price point that's at. All right, stop goes above there, or you can put your stop above the final high. The safer area would be above the final high, but of course you've got to risk more points, not pips, on the index there. All right, so to me, it looks like we could have a double top. And if we are having a double top, there's the potential for a double top price projection all the way down to what would be monthly support down here. We could be seeing the double top holding, a long-term move down to the price projection down there at 104.65. So you can monitor that. It's looking like a reversal for sure. Well, not for, there's never a 100% surety, but if I'm just doing my analysis, I would have to say, looks like a reversal. That line's annoying me because it's not straight. There we go. All right, so we can review that later in the week. So I don't know, Azure, I don't know whether that was your thoughts, but that's how I'm looking at it there. The longer term trend, this is a monthly range. We've moved down. This is all corrective back up to just short of the 79% level, creating some form of triple top area here at the 12880 level. I squash that in. There's more resistance there. All right. There's a whole band of resistance and support. All right. See it? Hold, support becomes resistance, became support, became resistance, it's resistance, resistance. All right, so it's staying at a very good level of resistance there. Well traded area. It obviously means something to the market. So kind of wish I'd sold at the top there now. All right, any more questions before we conclude? Let's just click through, see what's going on in the 15-minute charts. Not sure whether that Aussie yen can get up to those levels that I'm indicating, but starting to move down. Euro yen could still get up there, but of course, when it was up there during the day, it was the best time to trade that. So you could still be waiting for the possibility of getting in, but you may have missed the boat there up at that level. Be interesting to see if that level holds or trades through. Euro dollar. See, it's still above 108.02 at the moment, so still has the potential to move higher this at the moment. Pound yen. All right, it's moving down. So the 50-minute trade to the upside that I said was there, wasn't my bias, but it was there. Obviously wouldn't have worked because it's trading down. I would just keep dragging the fib. If you want to try and get in, keep dragging the fib down. Does it have another rally back up to the 79% level of that range? All right, pound dollar. Looking like a reversal, but of course things can change over the course of a day. But right now, I would be looking to the downside on that failure there at the moment, as I put out this morning. New Zealand dollar, New Zealand pairs aren't doing too much at the moment. Dollar Canadian, you know, you could watch for a pullback here. You could go to the 15-minute chart here. $15-minute trade entry, just draw your fib across that whole range. 79% is below 36.51 day support, but it could, you know, it could stab down through there. See how you had consolidation there and it broke above that high. So a break above that high, that line just there. Could be support at the 79% level there, if it was to pull back there. All right. You can monitor, see whether you can get a healthy pullback that you'd like to buy on that pair there. All right. All right, everybody. I think that's enough from me today. So just to give you a heads up about what's coming up. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through the 100 pip trade entry. It's a really simple set and forget entry technique. All right, all you need to be good at is finding levels that potentially are going to hold, like a 79% retracement level or a strong level of support or resistance. That's clearly holding a support or resistance. All right, so I'll take you through that tomorrow. All right, everybody, thanks very much. Hopefully you got some value from that. You got some levels that you can watch. What I would like to say is, you know, on the weekend and then on Tuesdays, I'm going to go to the AUS Securities YouTube channel. I'll find my analysis here, but I cover 12 pairs in terms of levels that I'm watching. I do one on the weekend, comes out on Saturday. That's this one. And then I do one on Tuesday morning. So I cover 6 different pairs. 12 pairs that I'm covering in the webinar, but the levels that I'm watching, I'm not giving you like real specific entries. I'm discussing the levels that I'm expecting may be retested and they may hold, or I'm expecting them to break. Levels that I'm looking to trade around through the week. And I gave dollar Canadian this morning. I gave you the dollar franc this morning. So get over to, I'll put it in the chat, get over to this page. Make sure you're catching those videos. They do get put in our Telegram, but if you're not in our Telegram, you'll miss. So they're well worth watching those. So you've got the levels that I'm going to discuss in more detail in the webinars. All right. Okay, everybody. Thanks very much for the questions coming in. Have a great evening or day wherever you are. And look forward to catching you tomorrow if you've got the time. Go over to our webinar page and you can register for the 100 pip trade entry tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. or more live market analysis coming up on Thursday, okay? All right, everybody. So thanks very much for coming and spending some time with me. It's always appreciated. Thanks very much. Have a great day.